If there is one stock that everybody wished that they have purchased back in 2022, it would be Nvidia. The company has grown so much that it replaced Apple as the most valuable company in the world. Back in 2020, nobody have thought that there is a company that will be capable to take over Apple in just a couple of years. And the greatest part is that it has grown by over 1,000%, which means that for every $1,000 that you would have invested in Nvidia back in 2022, it would have earned you today an extra $10,000. Imagine if you spent all of your savings into Nvidia. Today, you would be a multi-millionaire. But it's not just Nvidia, it's literally every AI company that is taking over the world. Another great example is Palantir. Palantir early investors are freaking happy because they are making so much money that everyone else is looking at them and they're like, I wish I had invested in Palantir. But if you actually look at it, it seems like AI is turning into one giant bubble. Just like the dot-com bubble was formed back in 1990s. And the nature of all bubbles is that they burst and they turn into a massive crash. And that allows a lot of people to buy those stocks at a fraction of the price. So some people are looking at the AI and they're like, it's not a big deal that we have missed the train because it's going to collapse and we will have another opportunity. But after giving it a very close look, it seems like the AI bubble is not going to burst. And the AI bubble is very different from the dot-com bubble. So here in this video, I want to answer a couple of questions. Why AI bubble is not going to burst, so it's not going to give you an opportunity to buy those stocks at pennies on the dollar. Secondly, how different the AI bubble is from the dot-com bubble. And finally, how can you profit from it regardless? If you're ready, give this video a thumbs up. And let's get right into it. Internet was created back in 1969, but it truly took off in 1990s when Netscape created the first browser that made it easy to interact with the internet. Internet was this mysterious technology that an average person had no idea about. You could talk about what internet could help you with, but if you cannot use it, if an average person cannot easily use that technology, then it's pointless for the vast majority of the populace. But then in 1995, Netscape comes out and they create the first browser that changed the entire world. And when they went on their IPO back in 1995, their stock on the first day of trading went from $28 per stock to as much as $58. If Netscape could go from $28 to as much as $60 in a single day, imagine what every other technology company can do. The largest companies back in 1990s started integrating internet into their entire business model. And in just 2 years, from 1995 to 1997, the venture capital investment into the internet went from $1.3 billion to as much as $10 billion. And a company such as Amazon, their stock went from $1.5 in 1997 to as much as $113. It was basically the Palantir of its days. The Amazon stock was going through the roof. And it wasn't just Amazon. You had all of these companies coming out and adding .com at their name, and then they saw their stock prices surge because the vast majority of people who are speculating and investing in the stock market, they have no idea how stocks works. They have no idea how to pick great stocks. So when they saw a .com at the end of their names, they realized that, or they thought, maybe this is the stock that is going to be the next Amazon, the next Netscape, and I want to profit out of it. So they started speculating and buying those stocks. Stock market literally shoot to the roof. And in just a couple of years, it went from less than 500 points to 1,500. That's a triple increase in such a short period of time. Yahoo, back in the days, this was literally the Google of the time. Its stock price went from less than $5 to as much as $118 in just a couple of days. I remember back in the days, my first email that I have ever created was in Yahoo. I mean, I don't literally remember the password and I haven't logged into that account for more than 15 years, so I have no idea if it's active or not. But back in the days when you look at Yahoo and you look at Google, you know that Yahoo is the boss. And it's very interesting how the market works, that one company fell off the grace while the other company dominated the market. And right now we are yet in that period of history when we are having another major shift. I find myself using, for example, ChatGPT much more often than Google, and I couldn't have imagined that to happen just a couple of years ago. And that speculation drove so much money into the market that it turned it into a bubble. And a couple of years later, as the nature of any bubbles, the bubbles burst and the entire stock market just collapsed. The Nasdaq alone collapsed by 78%. Of course, the internet did not end there and it recovered after that. By 2007, the stock market fully recovered, and some of those companies are some of the largest companies today. If you look at the top 10 largest companies, Amazon was created during the dot-com bubble. Google was founded during the dot-com revolution. Other companies emerged a couple of years later. But the dot-com revolution or the internet revolution did not disappear. It was simply a massive stock market crash that allowed investors to buy those stocks at a fraction of the price. But I want you to take a look at this right now and compare it to what's happening today. Since ChatGPT came out in 2022, the stock market has been growing by almost 70%. But AI is nothing new. AI has been around since 1950s, but we truly started using AI in 2010 or in 2011 when Steve Jobs came out with Siri. Remember iPhone 4S? You could literally just ask Siri questions and it will automatically give you answers from the internet. Of course, Siri is falling behind everyone else today, and Apple literally lost the opportunity to capitalize on AI. Maybe they have some time to take advantage out of it, but if you look at the market today, then Apple is far behind everyone else on AI. But back in 2011, Siri was literally the AI model that everybody wanted to replicate, and other companies started coming out with their voice assistants. However, what truly made AI so famous was ChatGPT in 2022. That's when every company in the world started integrating AI into their models. As if ChatGPT is the exact same thing as Netscape that has happened to the internet back in 1995. Internet was this complicated world. But now with an easy-to-use interface that Netscape created, everybody could use internet and profit and benefit out of it. The same thing with ChatGPT. Before it came out, people have heard about AI, they understood in theory how AI can help them improve their jobs and make them more productive, but nobody could truly use AI and integrate it within their lives. But since 2022, AI is everywhere. Look at every company in the world. They're trying to use AI and integrate it within their entire system that will allow them to become more productive. I mean, I remember last year, I logged into my Notion. I see Notion AI. I log into my Google Drive and there is Google AI Drive or whatever they call it. And everything that I use today has AI integrated within itself. Even the last Apple event that happened in the last September was all about AI. Even though that later on that people purchased those iPhones, they realized that most of these AI features that Apple bragged about in their conference didn't actually exist in iPhones yet, and they're about to come sometime in the future. I guess they're not even yet there, but nonetheless, Apple is also focused on making AI the core part of their business. But the biggest similarities is that whoever adds AI at the end of their name sees their stock price surge, and that drives a lot of speculation. And Nvidia is one of the greatest examples of AI application. In 2023, the revenue was at $26 billion. Fast forward to 2025, the revenue is $130 billion. That's a massive increase. And according to different estimates, it's only going to grow, and within the next couple of years, it is going to double. And that is amazing. We don't have such expectations for Apple, which is the most successful company in history. We don't have the exact same expectations with Microsoft or Google. The only company that we can have similar estimations is Nvidia, because everybody wants their GPUs. Without their GPUs, you cannot build the most advanced AIs. Amazon wants to build their AI models, but without the Nvidia GPUs, it's impossible. And that's why we have these companies investing in other businesses, in other Nvidia alternatives and competitors in order to diversify the market and not let Nvidia have an entire monopoly on this industry. As of today, they have spent over $100 billion in AI. And $100 billion is not a joke. That's a lot of money. It's literally the kind of money that some governments have their entire annual budget. And this is probably the lowest estimate. If we include other factors, it's probably much more than that. It's probably in hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is just the beginning of the road. What is going to happen in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? This number could easily go to $1 trillion. And it's interesting that some companies are rebranding themselves in such a way that they're calling themselves entire AI companies, such as Tesla. Tesla is a car company, then they turned themselves into a software business, and now Elon Musk claims that Tesla is the largest AI company in the world. Now, we can call them an AI company to a certain extent because the initial goal of Tesla was to build the first ever self-driving car, and you cannot possibly build that without having AI technology. But nonetheless, this entire rebranding is very interesting, and it's not just happening with Tesla, it's happening with everybody. But the biggest question is that all of that drives a lot of speculation because everybody wants to invest in the stock market and they want to make a lot of money, but most people have no idea which of these stocks are going to survive. The question is that, will it ever pay off? Will these companies make the $500 billion back? Yes, maybe AI is going to make everybody more productive. Maybe AI is going to make it much easier to use. But in the world of investing, it's all about money. It's all about whether your investments are going to pay off or not. And if they're not going to pay off, then it turns into a bubble. And that's when some of the investors realize that maybe it's time to sell our stocks because we want to make money at the end of the day. And when that sell-off happens, then we have a massive stock market crash. While there are so many similarities between the dot-com revolution and the AI revolution, there are fundamental differences between the two, which is why the AI bubble is not going to burst like the dot-com bubble burst. First of all, the internet revolution primarily happened in the United States. Yes, it was across the globe. It was happening in some part of Europe, in Japan and other countries. But if you look at the entire dot-com revolution, you will see that most of these companies emerged in the United States, and most of the capital that wanted to invest in the internet companies, it was invested in the United States. If you compare that to AI, AI today is not seen as the internet. It's seen as the next space race, and countries are rushing into the AI to make sure that they take full advantage out of it, which is creating a fundamental difference in the way they are being financed. Internet was primarily funded by private institutions who wanted to profit out of it. So you have hedge funds, investors, investment banks investing in different internet companies with the goal of profiting out of it. But AI is also driven to a certain extent by private investors, but it's mostly being driven by governments. Look at China that is rivaling the United States. Most of the investments that are getting into the AI are being funded by government or maybe indirectly by different kind of institutions that get their funds from the government in the first place. The same thing that you can see is happening in India, European Union, and the rest of the world, because all these governments understand the importance of AI and they're not willing to simply gamble it on the United States or some private investors. Secondly, back in the days, United States was at the top of the game. It was literally the only country that could dominate the world and nobody could say anything to the United States. The US had so much power back in 1990s that it could literally establish any kind of rules anywhere and nobody could say anything to the United States. So the US could simply relax and let the free market do its thing. Now compare that to today where we have real competition from China, EU and India. The entire geopolitical tensions that you see in the world today between United States and the European Union, United States and China, between China and the EU is that all those countries became so increasingly strong that all of them want to dominate the world. And when you are having so many real competition, you cannot let the free market do its thing. Now compare that to 1990s. China was barely being integrated into the global economy. European Union was not even formed, so you simply had like the western part of Europe that was heavily dependent on the United States. Japan was a good power back in the days, but it was also heavily dependent on the United States, especially for military. Russia was literally trying to get its economy together after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and India was barely feeding its population, and that left the United States at the top of the game. Today you have China, the second world's largest economy, and they're literally saying that we are going to compete. We are going to make sure that we are going to lead the world in AI. And the emergence of DeepSeek last year was a great example. It shook the entire world, especially Silicon Valley, that they could accomplish with less than $6 million what ChatGPT did with over $1 billion. That's a huge difference in how much they have invested. Imagine where the competition is going to be a couple of years from now. When it's privately funded, then it's profit-driven. Those corporations or investment funds or hedge funds are not looking to become geopolitical monsters on the entire global arena. They are trying to profit and make as much money as possible, especially when there are pension funds, investment banks, hedge funds. They are accountable to their investors at the end of the day of how much money they have made out of their money. What is their return on investment? Which is why they're concerned about profit. Now compare that to today where you have growth at all costs no matter what happens. China understands that they're not willing to lose the AI race to the United States, which is why they're going to fund their AI companies as much as possible. United States is still at the top of the game, but if it's going to lose the AI race to China, then it is going to lose its hegemony over the world, which is something that the United States doesn't want to lose, which means that it is going to provide the companies with subsidies that are working on AI. It is going to fund the AI, just like the space race. Going to the moon was not an objective, financially at least. It wasn't something profitable to do. But the US was so eager, it wanted to win over the AI, over the space race or over the Soviet Union, that it spent unbelievable amounts of money to get to the space in the first place just to win the Cold War. The same thing is happening over here. The stakes are too high to let the free market do its thing. If it was back in 1990s when the United States is still at the top of the game, yes, you can let the free market do its thing. But now if you let the free market do its thing and then this entire market collapses and then it will take the market, let's say another 5 to 7 years to entirely recover from that massive crash, it is going to give an upper hand to the US competitors such as the European Union and especially China, against whom the United States has been fighting the trade war that it recently started. In fact, this trade war started back in 2018 when Trump became the president the first time, which is why the government most likely is going to provide subsidies, deregulate the market, provide government contracts to all these companies to make sure that the AI revolution keeps growing no matter what. But the question is that who is going to profit out of this AI revolution? Now, if you look at the relationship between the wages and the productivity, you will quickly realize that back in 1970s, something different happened. Prior to that, for decades, productivity and wages grew hand in hand or side by side, because the more productive you are, the more value you bring to the company, the more money you're going to make, the more the company is going to compensate you, because for the exact same amount of time that you're spending to do the job, you are getting more things done. But something fundamentally changes back in 1970s when these two charts start to decouple, when wages decouple from the productivity. This is when automation started taking place, where a lot of companies started implementing automation within their factories that allowed for less workers. Secondly, they started exporting those jobs to low-cost countries. It allowed companies to cut costs and increase their profits. The same effect happened when internet was emerged. Everybody thought that internet is going to replace all of the jobs and we're going to work significantly less. But the influence of that is very clear. Productivity actually started growing, and it's very clear on the chart that you see right in front of you. But wages started to stagnate and they haven't increased much. And since internet was invented, productivity never stopped growing at all. So why didn't wages grow as much as productivity? And that's because companies are not interested in paying their employees more. Companies are obligated to make their shareholders richer, the people who are investing in their stocks, the people who are buying their stocks. Because at the end of the day, the shareholders are the owners of the business, and whoever runs that business is accountable to them. And right right now, we are on the brink of another revolution that is going to increase productivity dramatically, but wages most likely are going to stay the same and won't increase much. Which is why the biggest beneficiaries of this AI revolution are going to be the people who are investing in the right AI companies that will end up victorious at the end of the day. And the greatest part about it is that because this is so important for the government will ensure that an AI crash is not going to happen. And even if it happens, it's going to give you an advantage to buy those stocks at a fraction of the price. But most likely it's not going to happen because the government is not going to allow that, since it wants the United States to be at the top of the game. Which means that the only way to profit out of this AI revolution is to invest in the right companies. But the problem is that most Americans don't invest in the stock market, or when they invest, they treat investing like gambling. They buy a stock in hopes that it's going to rise. But why did you buy that stock? Nobody actually knows. Real investing isn't guessing which stock is going to rise. There is a reason why one stock rises, and there is a reason why some stocks or most stocks end up falling down. And when you master this skill, you will be able to find out which of these stocks are going to rise, which is something you have to master if you want to profit out of it. Because if you believe that companies are going to pay you more, it's not going to happen. And the data on that is very clear. The only way you can profit out of it is when you are an investor in the company that is going to take the biggest advantage out of AI. And if you want to become a professional investor, then check the first link in the description of this video. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.